Hello everybody, my name is Kate Wexell and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So it's been kind of a long time since I posted anything on here, but I've wanted to make this video for a long time. I just felt kind of embarrassed because while I did get accepted to a lot of wonderful institutions, I also got rejected and waitlisted from a lot that I think that myself and my community sort of falsely expected for me to be able to gain acceptance to. Actually, after this, I will be creating an entire video about the schools that I was rejected from and why, and different advice that I have for students. Anyway, most of these videos are usually just about like Ivy League schools, Stanford, MIT, Northwestern, UChicago, WashU, all of those different kinds of schools, and I thought that I could maybe give some love to some of the other more 30 to 50% acceptance rate schools, because those are honestly schools that a lot of people, if they are more academically inclined in their high schools, but aren't necessarily like that top 0.5% of students, that they should be shooting for. So I want to give people just a little bit of hope. So the schools that I was accepted to were University of Missouri-Columbia, where I'm currently attending, the University of Iowa, Emerson College, Kenyon College, and Fordham University. And so with each of these schools, I applied as either a creative writing major, English major, or journalism major, and that's what I'm currently studying at the University of Missouri. Basically, while there were a lot of things that I definitely did wrong with my application, which I'll mention in the next video, I wanted to sort of go through the things that I think that I did right, and rather than just listing off everything like what people typically do in the stats videos, I wanted to actually go through why it either worked or why I thought that that could maybe be improved, and then at the end, how I think that I got into these specific schools. And in the future, I'll probably also do a video about why I ended up selecting Mizzou over some of those 30% selectivity schools, and sort of what my thoughts are on that now after I've been at Mizzou for a semester. So if we take a look at the Common App, basically for University of Iowa, I applied for creative writing. I believe I also did that at Emerson, but I'm not sure. I think I applied as an English major at Kenyon and Fordham, and I applied as a journalism student at the University of Missouri. So regarding my classes, the whole class situation at my school was a bit odd because we didn't have a lot of class periods, or as many class periods as a typical high school, and we had a very weird situation with our honors and AP classes. So basically you weren't allowed to take AP classes until your junior or senior year. Besides, you could take AP music theory your sophomore year. And so I was taking the most rigorous course load that I could at my school up until senior year, and then I wouldn't necessarily say that I slacked off, but I made some choices to take some classes that I was more interested in than, say, necessarily take AP Calculus, which was the last available math class at my school. So I don't think that course load is necessarily important to talk about regarding my acceptance to these schools in particular, especially since I put a large focus on literature and English and those sorts of topics, so I think that that worked out for me at those specific schools that I applied to. Regarding AP courses, though, I did not actually apply with any AP test results. Since we weren't allowed to take AP classes until junior year, I actually didn't end up taking any of the tests that year because of the pandemic, and it was just sort of a weird situation with trying to do the tests that year. So out of the 3 AP classes that I took that year, which were AP Physics, AP US History, and AP Literature, I actually opted to get dual credit for AP Physics and AP US History through St. Louis University, and then because of that I didn't actually have to take the test, and I was able to get all the credit for that at my current institution. And then I took the AP Literature and Composition exam at the end of my senior year, and I was able to get a 5 on that, but none of that was actually on my application. It just said that I was planning on taking the AP Literature exam, AP German exam, and AP Music Theory exam. My school only offered 15 AP classes, and I don't know exactly what the school form sheet looks like, but it should have been able to sort of explain that that was a fairly decent amount of AP courses that you could have taken at my school based on all the prerequisites that were required for most courses. And like, for example, you couldn't necessarily take all 15 AP classes because some of them were like AP German, AP Spanish, AP French, and that requires 4 years of each of those languages, which is physically impossible for any student to do at my school. And so basically how our rating scale worked was it was kind of odd. It was out of 4.33 and we only had a weighted GPA. So basically in an honors or AP class, an A or an A plus was 4.33 and then an A minus was a 4.0. And in a regular class, it was an A or an A plus was a 4.0 and then it went to 3.7 and so on. So my GPA was a 4.048 out of 4.33. So that meant that I did graduate summa cum laude, and my GPA did grow during my senior year before graduating. And then I calculated it, and it was out of 4.0, if it would have been unweighted on a regular scale, it would have been about a 3.86, so it wasn't quite good enough for some higher schools. However, it was definitely within the range for these schools. And then if it would have been weighted, it would have been a 4.25. I definitely could have done better with my GPA, except for I really put a strong focus on taking a lot of music courses, and those classes were unweighted, so it did bring my GPA down. And so then, since our ranks were based off of that, it was kind of odd because also with our ranks, it would be if like 10 people tied for rank 30, they would all be listed as rank 40. So I got 44 out of 623 at the time that I was applying, and my rank did rise, but by the end of the school year, my class size has decreased because people dropped out, so or people graduated or something like that, you know, and there was early graduation. So I was in the top 6% of my class, so that was pretty good for the 30% acceptance rates. For test scores, I really don't think that test scores were as important because, like, for Kenyon College, for example, I actually forgot to send in my test scores. I think I accidentally applied test optional and I still got in. So that goes to show that everything else can really make up for your test scores, and I've heard a lot of stories about that, especially with the pandemic going on. But basically the whole story for my school is you had to take the practice SAT, the PSAT 9 in freshman year. You took the practice ACT sophomore year. I didn't know anything about national merit, and so I didn't really know anything about the PSAT. I never had any test prep, nothing like that. Honestly, I don't know that my parents would have been willing to pay for that. So I would do maybe like an hour or so of studying before each of these tests, and I didn't really know what a good score was. So during my junior year, I took the SAT. I don't even remember what I got the first time. And then I took the PSAT a few days later. Needless to say, I did not get a National Merit Scholar Award because my school actually has 2 campuses, and so it just said on my form which room I was supposed to go to. It did not say the campus, so I went to the main campus, and it was actually at our freshman campus, so I was an hour late to the test. By the time I had wandered around the building, realized nobody was there, asked the office what had happened, drove the 20 minutes over to the other campus, and figured out where I needed to be. So my score was not great on that. However, then my junior year in December, I took the ACT. I got a 33, so I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm fine with that. And then I took the SAT again on the national test date when everybody was required to take it, and I got a 1450. So I submitted that. It was probably not the greatest, and looking back on it, I probably should have retaken the SAT again to help me with the other schools that I applied to. However, for those and for the current institution that I'm at, that was more than enough to be in the honors college and to be selected for all sorts of things. And then, so for my activities, they were probably not the best. However, I will explain why I think that they did well for schools like Kenyon. But basically, the first thing I put down was journalism and publication, and I said writer, and then I said weekly contributor to the local newspaper, published a poetry book, published in 2 anthologies, 7 writing contest awards, and 8 additional publications. My second thing was community service, and I put down the Girl Scouts. I said 13 years of Girl Scouts, completed my bronze, silver, and gold awards, earned my PAT, CIT, and religious awards, served as a counselor for younger girls. My next thing was then Boy Scouts, and I said served as senior patrol leader for 1.5 years, completed national youth leadership training, and started my Eagle Project in August of 2021. The next thing was founder and executive director of The Compass, and I said founded an educational website and literary magazine devoted to promoting global understanding with a team including PhD scholars. The next part was that I was a piano teacher, And so I said, have studied piano for 12 years and performed competitively, have taught students about music theory, history, and piano technique for 4 years. The next part was I was a staff writer for the Diversity Story online literary magazine, where I said I contribute articles, interviews, and photography about different cultures, currently creating a mini-series about the Sioux Native Americans. The next part basically listed like every ensemble that I had been in as a part of our music program, and I said I have learned 3 brass instruments that I played in every ensemble at my school, community outreach, and as an all-state musician. Then the next part was very similar to that. I sort of lumped everything from my church together, so I said praise band keyboard player, member of youth group, Shiloh United Methodist Church, and so I said I'm a keyboard and synthesizer player in the praise band, participate in mission trips and service projects, and give sermons to over 200 people. Then the next part was Model UN. I kind of messed up on this because I completely left out the facts that I was the club president, so whoops. But I said Model UN lead delegate. I said I've been a lead delegate since 10th grade, have won 4 awards, including Outstanding Delegate, and served 2 years as Security Council Delegate. And then the next part was Philosophy Club President. So I was president for 1 year, and I organized discussions, created our readings, and I helped us hold open dialogues about current events and traditional philosophers. So then for my honors and awards, my first one was the Girl Scout Gold Award, so that was an international award. The second one was, I had only gotten 1 scholarship at that point, and that was from the East St. Louis NAACP, so that was a regional award. Then I put down the Claudette Sorrell Piano Fellows program, and that was a national award. I said that I was a finalist for the PEO Star Scholarship, and then the results for that wouldn't be announced until April, because I was selected for that in like September of my senior year, but then it was going to take them a long time because I had to fill out multiple other applications for that. But that was a national award. I actually did end up getting that, so that was like kind of a big deal. And then my last one that I put down was All-State. And so if I'm going to be reflecting on what I think I did well for that regarding Kenyon specifically, since that was the most selective school that I was accepted to, Kenyon is really focused on creative writing, and so I had a strong focus on literary magazines. The Diversity Story isn't actually a literary magazine, but looking back on it, I guess that's how I phrased it. And so I said that I was not only the founder of a literary magazine, but that I also worked for a literary magazine, and that also I was very invested in writing poetry and doing different things like that. So I think that that really helped, as well as I did have a couple of leadership positions, so like I was president of the Philosophy Club and Model UN, and then I served as a principal trumpet in multiple different groups at school, and I tried really hard to do a variety of things so they could see that I had like a dedication very strongly to music. And then I talked about that more in my essay, because my Common App essay was actually about how I was born with a profound hearing loss, and it started off talking about me getting my first hearing aid when I was in 6th grade and actually being able to hear birds for the first time. And then it talked about how I've learned 4 different instruments despite all of that, and how I have been trying to play well in the music programs, and about how linked to that I actually have synesthesia. So I relate color to sounds in this weird kind of way. I didn't actually know it was a thing until I was talking to my parents about it a few years ago, and they were like, yeah, that's not how people normally think about it. So I think that those 2 things together fit really well with Kenyon, and they also like to have more of a kind of academic, bookish vibe kind of thing going on, and so I think Model UN and Philosophy Club contributed to that as well. The other schools, my transcript services for my school actually said that I had like a 99% chance of acceptance to them. So I didn't do super well with college applications. But then another reason why I think I was able to get into Kenyon with all of that stuff is because I was actually selected as their music merit scholarship recipient. So I applied for the merit scholarships back in December after submitting my actual application, because they let you submit for like an arts scholarship, a music scholarship, and a creative writing scholarship. And so I had submitted videos of me playing piano, me playing French horn, trumpet, all sorts of different things, They were actually really interested in French horn, so I had already done the interview. I actually went to the campus as well, talked to their music director. They were offering me this massive scholarship for that, and so all of my music stuff I think also really helped. I don't think that they would turn me down after already deciding that I was going to get that scholarship. I will say the music director said that was a separate process from the actual admissions process, so that he couldn't guarantee me acceptance, but I think that definitely helped. And then some schools let me include my resume, other things like that. I don't think that the additional information section really added too much. It sort of just expounded on a couple of different experiences. However, if I were to do things differently, I probably would have rephrased some of my activities to, instead of saying specific roles and like acronyms and stuff like that, to actually just explain why I did something or what was my impact on people. Like, for example, in Girl Scouts, instead of saying which trainings I took, I would maybe talk more about how I led girls, so that I could talk more about the leadership that I had, because I feel like I had a bigger role in my community than my application let me display. So another thing would be, I wish that I would have known about more opportunities sooner on in life, and I'll talk about this a lot more in the next video, because that's a big important thing to me now. Was I feel like I was sort of at a disadvantage, because I'm not really from a community where a lot of people are obsessed with getting into top schools, and so there's not a lot of information or resources about how to do that, or about how to get involved in organizations that are bigger than just your community level. I try to get very involved with my community. I did a lot of service for my region, but I wasn't able to sort of scale that and do that at a larger level. And then the last thing that I would probably do to change my application is I would have probably taken some more rigorous classes during my senior year, instead of just doing whatever because I thought I was just going to go to a state school anyway. So anyway, this was sort of just a very brief stats video. It's probably longer than most of the stats videos are. However, I'm going to provide a lot more information and feedback in my next video about why I was rejected. But anyway, thank you so much for viewing this video. I really do appreciate it. And I'll talk more about the University of Missouri and my experiences here as well very soon.